it's that time again. Got a new blank canvas. Today I think I want to try to do this little beach scene here. This is a painting I did a couple years ago with my little church art class, and everybody loved it, but a lot of people are in there now that weren't there for that, and I've been asked by a lot of people to do it again and online and to teach it because it was before we started making the videos. So I'm going to go ahead and do a version of it. We did it tall on a 16 by 20, but I'm going to try to do this little landscape version of it on an 11 by 14 canvas. And let's get started. This is the sketch that I'm going to use, and I'm going to make this available in the description. If any of you at home want to paint this, I'll put the reference photo and the sketch in the description. Links to those so you can download those as a PDF and just print them out. They're actual size, so you can lay it on top of your canvas if you can print it that size. I've had to print it, 2 sheets of 8.5 by 11 and tape them together to make it work sometimes. But what I like about this photo is I like how these lines all kind of radiate out from the middle. All of the lines in the painting draw towards the middle. It makes you're walking down the beach. It draws your attention just straight down the beach line. We got these little cluster of houses over here. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on those. They're going to be mostly implied. They're not the subject. The subject is this beach, but I just want to show you the sketch, how these lines work. So the first thing I've done is I've taped off the canvas for my horizon. Now, normally I would coat the whole canvas with something, and I will do that. I will coat the bottom, but I want the color I'm going to have to use on the top is going to have some phthalo blue in it, which is very powerful, and so it's hard to cover up. So I'm going to do the sky first. So I've taped off my horizon line. I'm going to focus just on the sky first. Let's look at those colors. On the palette today, I've got ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, burnt umber, cadmium yellow light, and white gesso. I think that's going to be 99% of what I may pull another color in later, but I think we'll be able to get it all out of this one. This is just a 1.5 inch flat, a synthetic bristle brush, really soft bristles, and I've just kind of wet the bristles. And I want to start with about a 50-50 blend of ultramarine blue and phthalo blue. That gives me a really bright summer day sky. That phthalo blue really is strong. So mix the two together, then just kind of bring a little bit of my white in there until I get it to where I want it. That looks to be about right. All right, let's come up here and look at that. All right, yeah, that's a good color. It's pretty dark for a sky, but it's going to have some white as it comes down. But my first coat, I'm just going to get this in here pretty solid. You always want to kind of, on that first coat, you always want to work the brush back and forth, kind of dig down into the canvas, make sure that that first coat of paint gets down into the fibers of the canvas. Make sure I go all the way out to the edge. There's not going to be a whole lot done to this sky, so I'm going to kind of smooth out some of my brush strokes. I will need another coat because I can see through that a little bit. But at the bottom, go ahead and rinse that brush out. At the bottom, it gets pretty light, right at the horizon. We'll come back with some straight gesso while that's wet. Straight gesso in here. And this is why I like putting the tape on here, because I can use a wide brush and I can go quickly and get a good blend while it's wet without having to be careful of that line. All right, now that's much lighter at the bottom. All right, it's not a perfect blend, but that's why we do several layers, and that's what this painting is going to be all about, layers and layers of really thin washes to create those blends. I'm going to dry that real quick, and I'll do my second coat. All right, that's dry. Now I'm going to put this second coat on here. Same as the first, just going to get another layer so it can be a little more solid. And I don't have as much water. Kind of put this paint on pretty creamy. although I don't have a whole lot of it in this blue, but I'm gonna make sure my light area at the bottom is nice and light. Right, rinse out that brush, squeeze out all that extra water, and let's come back with the gesso. Bottom edge. I really want it to be pretty light down at the very bottom. You just have to kind of work fast, and a bigger brush. If you're using a small brush for this, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to get that to blend. I'll use a little bit more water to get that to blend. All right, come back into my blue a little bit in between. It's getting too high up. I'm going to have to make some more blue. On the bigger canvas, especially doing it tall, it was a little easier to get this blend because it's a bigger area. But on this little canvas, I got to go from really intense blue to super light at the horizon pretty quickly. A little bit of a challenge. I think that's pretty good. All right, let's see about getting a color for this sand so we can do the bottom. It's a pale beige color. I know I'm going to need some yellow, some of this brown, and a lot of gesso to get started. And that gets me pretty close. I don't want it to be too yellow. See how that works? I'm going to need a lot more of it. And just keeping with my wide brush because this is just going to be blocking in. Most of this is going to be covered up. I want to pull in just the tiniest amount of this blue into that as well. That'll pull it a little more towards neutral. A little bit lighter. Just kind of got to play with it a little here and there, and I'm not really don't really care if it matches this exact photo. It needs to be a nice sand color. And now I'm used to the beaches. I live in Alabama, so I'm closer to the panhandle of Florida. When we go to the beach, that's where we end up. So that's some really light white sands, really. So that's kind of what I'm going for. Let me get some more gesso in that. Sometimes it takes a little while to get it exactly what you want. I think that's pretty good right there. All right, let's put that on there. This is just the undercoating anyway. All right, and I pulled the tape off. I will probably end up putting some more back on in a minute because I want to get my ocean's going to come right up there. Those lines, when you're painting a water line, especially the ocean, I always try to use tape because it's nothing worse than getting a crooked line for your water horizon. That will quickly make things look weird. You get it tilted, you'll have to hang the painting on the wall sideways so it won't spill out. So that's the one time I really do like to use tape. Now I'm not even trying to get up to that line just yet because this is going to be ocean over here. It's going to be darker blue. Just want this coated with that sand. Already it looks like we have a perfect beach. All right, I'm going to dry that and do one more coat. Okay, got the second coat on here and this is dry. So now the canvas is covered. Step one complete. I want to turn my attention now to the sky. We got a couple of little clouds I want to put in, just little tiny things. I know sometimes clouds are intimidating to people, but these are very, very easy right here. These are going to be, they're just small, wispy clouds. If you look at the picture here, they're just real small and wispy. I don't even care if I have that many. And I do notice my white here is not white enough, so I'm going to work on that some too. I'm going to stick this reference photo above here so I can see it to just kind of go by, but I don't care if I have it exactly like that. It's just a guide. Now I'm going to start with some gesso with the tiniest amount of that blue in it. I don't want to use pure white for these clouds. And I've got a soft bristle. Um, this is just a little flat brush, maybe 1/4 inch. And I want to put some of that blue paint and then kind of just dab it off on a paper towel. That super light blue paint, I'm just going to get most of it off. And so what you want to do is just pick a spot and just kind of apply some of the paint in a shape. I'm keeping the brush horizontal to kind of keep everything kind of flat. All right, I'm just going to put some paint on there. Not a whole lot. This is not real thick paint. And then I'm really going to scrub all of the paint out of the brush. So it's basically clean, it's dry. And then I'm just going to come back in here and scrub around on that and soften up them edges. Now you got to work quickly because it's very dry already. I'll put the tiniest amount of water now. You can reactivate this paint before it gets completely dry with a little water. But if you get too much, it's just going to pull it off. So see how that did. But that's a good point too. If you don't like it at this point, get a wet paper towel and wipe it off. I'm just kind of scumbling is what this is called. Kind of pushing the paint around, moving the brush in every direction, just softening up those edges. And all of a sudden there's a cloud. Same thing, very little paint. I'm going to come up here. Now this particular picture just has a few spots with some of these wispy clouds. Obviously you don't want to make them all identical. You don't want Charlie Brown clouds. Simpsons, the Simpsons clouds. Yeah. So you don't want to put like one here, one here, one here, one here, and just evenly space them out and make them uniform. That's kind of one of the hardest things about painting nature and landscapes is trying to make things random, Try not to make patterns. We naturally want to make patterns out of things. Our brain works better in patterns and in sequence, so we want to pattern everything and make it perfect and symmetrical, and that just, when it comes to painting landscapes, that just makes it weird. Now I'll take a couple of spots where I come off from the edge of the canvas and come in, just because you don't want it to look like you're stopping at the edge. But everything's horizontal. Little stuff here and there. I'll make sure I get something off the edge of the canvas over here. Although some of this is going to have our little buildings over there. All right, I think that might be enough. I don't want to do too much to it. Now while I'm in that color, now I can do the same kind of technique down here on the horizon to get that lighter. And I'll just kind of put some paint on, work it till it fades out at the top. And this is important because it's how we're getting our depth. Not a whole lot in the sky to give you depth, but that light at the bottom really makes it look further away. And it's just right at the very bottom edge. Now, if you try this dry brush technique and your paint, if you use too much paint, it's not going to work. If you use too much water, it's not going to work. It needs to be dry, but you really need to use a soft brush, a soft bristle. This is a synthetic squirrel is what it would be called. It's black tackline is the name of the material, but it's really soft. Not an expensive brush. These are cheap brushes from Hobby Lobby. Just that little bit is going to make it have so much depth. I'll take my time and come all the way across with it, except for where the buildings are going to be on the left from about here over, so just really to here. doing a little section at a time. And I don't know if that's supposed to be clouds back there or if it's just, you know, the fog of the distance or what. But doesn't matter. Use your finger if you need to. Get that soft. Come back over this part and make sure I get it really light at the very bottom. Because we're going to have the ocean over here, so we're going to have some contrast. It's going to be darker. The water is going to be pretty dark right there. So I want it to be pretty light right at the top of the water. That blue, that phthalo blue is very pretty. You know, don't use it often unless it's this kind of sky, this kind of midsummer, beautiful blue sky. Then you might use some of that phthalo blue in there. But it's so powerful. It's hard to cover up. If it gets on your fingers, you know, it gets in your clothes. This stuff is nuclear. It gets on everything. I think I like that. Make it a little higher on this side. Just don't want to stop. I'll go behind my buildings a little bit here. Okay. All right. I'm going to throw my sketch on here real quick. All right, got my sketch on here. You could probably barely see it on camera, but I used transfer paper and I used my sketch and I lightly put these because I don't want these lines to be visible. I'm going to paint over them with light colors and thin layers, so I don't want them to show through. So even after putting the sketch in, I took a gum eraser and kind of went over it to lighten them as much as possible. Just wanted to be barely visible. I did sketch the houses a little darker under here, but then I put this piece of tape on. That's going to be my horizon. Again, the ocean line is very important. When you use this blue tape, I always take my fingernail and kind of really scratch the edge of it where it touches the canvas. It's not going to hurt the paint. The paint's dry. And I'm really going to get a good seal there, because if you don't, that paint will seep under there and look like something out in the ocean. Okay, so I'm going to start there, and we're just going to start at the top. Now, looking at this picture, we're going to start up here at the ocean, this dark greenish blue color, and it's going to lightly fade down. So it's going to be in stages. You see the sketch. You've got kind of the green area, the line that goes here that's in green. It gets a little lighter as it comes down. Then you've got the wet sand here. And then another line over here that separates the white sand from the wet sand. So we're just going to start on this side and kind of work our way around, starting with that green ocean. Let's make that color. Okay, so I know that ocean is going to have a lot of blue. It's going to have both blues. Just pull a spot down here. Now that phthalo blue, as I mentioned, is very powerful, but it's needed to make this ocean. And it's going to be a good bit of yellow because it's got some green to it. That's obviously way too green. But we'll start there and do a puddle of blue out next to it. See where we want to fall in between there somewhere. That's something you learn that beginners struggle with, is when you're mixing paint, instead of just starting with a pile and just keep adding until you get what you want, you know, get close, get another one next to it that's in the other direction, and find the middle ground. And don't make a whole palette full of paint. That's something beginners do for sure, is use way too much paint, make a gallon of each color they try to make. So as I add the gesso to that, it pales it, it makes it really pale. I know I don't want that much gesso in it, but somewhere in the middle of these two should be close to what I want to end up with. Now this is my photo here. Let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, that's pretty close. Maybe get a little more just so. A little more ultramarine blue, maybe. About like that. Okay. And now that's going to be the color as it comes to the top. As it fades down, obviously the sand color is going to show through as I put it on thin enough. So having it fade down into this sand color, I'll be able to get a lot of that to show through. But as I come down, I'm going to add some of this green to it, and I'm going to go a little more water, and maybe even mix a little of the sand color in with it to get those different values. Let's go back up here and see what it does. So I've got a flat brush for this. This is just going to be the very top edge, right up to that tape. And this is one of those things, when you use tape, you can't really see exactly what's going on until you pull the tape off. But I know for the most part my water is right up here, and I think I'm going to switch to a different brush now because this one is really big. I've got let me grab a dagger brush. Yeah. This is one of my favorite brushes. This is just a dagger. It's called a dagger brush. Let me wet it a little bit so you can see what the bristles do. They kind of flare out to a point, but that point can be very sharp. You can make really thin, detail lines with the tip, but it's a flat, if you spread it out, it's a flat blade. And this one has really soft bristles. You can get them, with different kinds of bristles, but this will be good for getting in those areas where the edge of the beach is kind of small here. The edge of the sand, these little shapes. Now, that one is not part of this, so I'm going to come on down to this. Now I want the very top edge to be pretty solid, but as I come down, I am going to add water. Go ahead and just go with straight water right here on that. Keeping all my strokes horizontal. Even though these lines are coming this way, they're all zigzag because they're mostly horizontal lines. I'm going to let that water just kind of wash that stuff out. See how the sand color is showing through now. I'm just going to follow my sketch mostly. I'm going to let that color blend with what's below it. Going to push it around. This is almost a watercolor technique right here, where you use really thin watery paint and let it kind of show the color below it. Now I'm going to have to put some more on the top edge here to keep it dark, but I want that to blend. And it's one of those things you got to kind of just go take your time and do it in layers, because it's going to get it's going to look different when it dries. See how runny that is? When that dries, that's going to be a lot different. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my big brush here and let this, I know I've got a line there. I'm going to go ahead and soften that line. I don't want to have a hard line. I'm going to go ahead and soften that. I'll put more layers on it to thin that out. I'm going to keep it pretty solid up here. If you do have brush strokes, let them be, horizontal. But those will not show up when it dries because this is so watery. It's gonna fade. I'm gonna go ahead and hit that with a blow dryer. That's such a thin layer. I'm gonna go ahead and blow dry that, and we'll just do layer after layer. Okay, that's dry. I come back with my same darker color on top, all the way up to the line. You want to be careful getting watery paint up to that tape too, because it will seep under the tape a little more if it's more watery. But I want it solid at the top anyway, so we'll keep that pretty creamy. Just letting that letting that paint come out of the brush. And when it starts to run out, use that to fade it down. You got to do a little and dry it, and do a little and dry it, because it will start rolling up on you. If it starts drying and you're still brushing over it with a dry brush, a lot of times it'll roll up. But each time I do that, I'm going to clean my brush and wet the brush, and I'm going to come back with water on this bottom edge and just soften those edges with water. Pull that in, soften it as much as I can. I don't want to have any hard edges to cover up. Yeah, nothing wrong with a little finger painting too. Yeah, that works pretty good. All right, dry it, next layer. All right, with that dry, I'm going back to the top. This is some really creamy paint. I really want to get it solid at the top. Didn't really want that to puddle up right there, but pull it out. This top 2 or 3 inches can be, this top inch or so can be pretty solid, but I don't want these edges to be soft. So again, water, squeeze some of it out, and kind of feather those edges. So that was all the same color so far. It already looks like it's a gradient kind of coming into that sand. But now that I come down, I'm going to put a little more green in it. I'm going to go ahead and do that before I dry it, because it's still kind of wet. I'm going to put some of that green in there and make sure that I got some water. A couple of streaks of that green kind of in there. Just going to throw it in. Add water. Use the water to kind of blend it. This was a little easier on a bigger canvas because you got more room to kind of blend around. But that's all right. We'll just use smaller brushes. Maybe our fingers. So that green tinted it a little bit, but it's still showing that sand through there. See how it's getting that? It's getting that texture. It almost looks like you can see through the water to the sand. That's what we want. All right. Make sure that my coastline here stays pretty clean. I can do that with water. Just water. Come in here and scrub that out a little as I need to. Going to have some white in here, some waves and things to kind of make those lines, but all right. Come on down with some of that water. I'm going to try to mix a little bit of my sand color with my bluish green. That gives me this sort of mint color, which is what it looks like where it's blended, where it has blended with the sand below. I'm just helping it by adding that into the paint. Anytime you do a layer, go up into the layer before, down into the other layer. I like how these bristles are separating like that. Let me grab a different brush. That one may be ready to be thrown away. Yeah. Each step of the way, I'm just going to kind of blend back and forth. Now this color is still water, so it's going to come all the way down, but I want it to get a little more clear, a little more just sand color as it comes down. But out here, it's green. It's kind of got that green tint to it. horizontal brush strokes. All right, I'm going to come into even more of my sand. Yep, so there's a lot of water in this, and I've got the sand color with just a tint of that green. This is the edge of my water right here, which is almost clear as it gets to the close to you here. It's almost crystal clear. Okay. All right, I'm gonna dry that now. That's it for water. That's all I'm gonna do to the water. I'm gonna put some ripples and some things out there, maybe little waves crashing. But as far as the color of the water, that's as far as that's gonna go. So I'm gonna dry that, and then we'll pull that tape off. All right, let's go ahead and remove this tape. Yeah, that's a good clean line. Okay, very important that the ocean stays straight, flat. That was good. Now, I've got some of my sand color. This again, just a flat brush. This is the part where the sand is just wet. Okay, see that color? I'm going to follow this line. Now this is a pretty hard line in spots where the wet sand meets dry sand, kind of where the water has washed up. This is just wet sand. But that, I'm going to pull that over into my water. Not worried about stopping at the edge of the water. So pull it under there. Use a little water in my brush to do that. There we go. So that's creating that illusion of just sand underwater. Yes, there's not much difference in the color here and there, and that's okay. Because when we put our ripples and things in there, it's going to make that look right. I'm going to come along this edge real quick. I'm going to soften this line just a little bit now that I've put it on there. Make sure that it's not too hard of a line. But it's harder than some. It's a pretty distinct area where the dry ends and the wet sand starts. So just softening it a little bit. All right. And I'm going to go to a smaller, let me get my smaller flat brush and do some places further up the beach because it happens up here as well. There's places where it's just wet sand all along the way. Okay. Yeah, I think that worked. All right, now while that's drying, let's do, I'll go back to this bigger brush. There's an area up where the houses are, right at the base of them, where it is almost white up here, where the sand is really, really dry. This is that, if you've ever been to Florida, the Panhandle, the Florida beaches, all the Florida beaches, they're that white sugar sand, really white, really white sand. So maybe take a few coats of this to lighten that up, and that goes all the way out to here. Try to cover up my pencil line a little. Okay. Want to make sure that's nice and white. It's pretty dry, so I'm going to go ahead and just do a second coat on it. That'll look more right later. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, we've about got everything blocked in. I'm gonna put, while I'm in that shadow sand color, let me get a little bit of the dark, because there's a little spot at the base of these houses where there's a shadow kind of coming across there. And a little bitty spot, little line through here. A couple of little things like that. And we'll work on some of this detail stuff here in a little bit, kind of create some of these lines. But the next part, we gotta start putting some of this ripples and things in the water, which is really where the magic starts. So I think I want to start with maybe my small flat brush again, same one I did the clouds with, and I'm going to go into some gesso. I don't want it to be pure white necessarily. Put a little bit of the ocean blue-green in it to start with, and the same as the clouds, really. I want to put just a tiniest amount of paint in a spot and then kind of smush it out. That's really all it takes to create some of these little effects. Put some paint on there and smear it out. There's some of that up here that's really small. This is all about creating depth right here, doing the really small stuff far away. And it's going to get bigger as it comes closer. Some of this right at the shoreline. But in the distance, it has a little white in it. Not a whole lot. A little here and there. There are a couple of areas where, and I don't want to get too carried away with this, but there's a couple of areas where you can see where the water's kind of rolling, but it's not exactly a wave yet. It's just kind of rolling, and it just, you can see that the color is a little darker in that area. A couple of real thin places like that. And this is all just the same colors we've been using underneath. Just go a shade. You know, if you're painting one here, go the shade above it. You pick a color here to do the next one down. So that's a little too green. I don't want to get too much of this in here. Just a little bit of character here and there. Okay, I don't want to do too much. There is some spots, okay, as we get closer in the water. Like, say, for instance, there's an area about here where the water's rolling a little bit. You can see just a little bit of a ripple. I'm going to do that with mostly water. That's a little bit of that sand, a little bit of sand color. It really is just to create the effect that the water's being pulled back out like that. You can kind of put a little water in, pull it out. As those waves come up, they can pull, you know, roll up and then pull back out like that. Make sure that I'm not stopping at the canvas. A lot of water in this. This is okay. So don't want to do too much of that. My wet sand here, my edge of the water is here, and that's where I really want to focus some attention, because this is where you're going to have, you know, the really white cap, foamy water there. Before I put any white on that, though, I want to make sure this is completely dry, so I'm going to hit that with a blow dryer. Okay, I'm going to start with just some gesso. This is just straight, and my brush had a little bit of that ocean color in it, but this is about as close as I'm ever going to get to just using straight white, straight gesso. And I'm going to pick a spot. I think I'm going to start kind of in the middle here because I need to get my technique down before I get to the bottom. But right at the edge where this water is, using my brush, my flat brush, keeping it horizontal, I'm going to create that foam on the edge. Just do a section at a time. And it's kind of just a zigzag horizontal pattern that kind of fades out as it goes out into the water. Now this had a little bit of a ridge there. I may have to get a smaller flat brush for this. But having a lot of water in the brush helps to keep it thin and flat like that. On the edge, I'm putting, pretty heavy paint, but then as I go out, it's just kind of disappearing. Just kind of back and forth with keeping the brush flat. I don't want to brush this way. I want to keep it flat. And small little area at a time. Where it's like lacy in the middle there. It gets a lot of little holes. Following that ridge line, there's another one there. See how that's working? This brush is probably fine for getting closer here with kind of bigger areas. But as I get further back, I'm going to have to go to a smaller flat brush. Just want to have kind of nervous hands back and forth. Let the tip of the bristles dance around on there. This area here had a little piece flowing out from under that. So not a whole lot to that, but it's kind of magical how it works. Even a little further back where those ridges are. Okay, let me find my other flat brush here. Here's one. There's a much smaller flat brush. All right, lots of water. Let's see, this part, you really got to try to keep it flat. That's the hardest thing, is keeping the illusion of it flattening out. Keeping those brush strokes horizontal as much as you can. It's all the way up here. That backside just kind of fades out. I want to have it pretty solid right at the edge, so you can tell where the edge of the ripple is. Okay. All right, I'm going to dry that, and then I'll show you the magic part. Okay, that's dry. Now I've taken my sand color that we were using for the wet sand here, and I've added a little bit of more blue to it and a little bit more brown to it to darken it. So it's a gray, but it's still that sand color, but it's a little more dark. Now, to me, this is the little detail that makes this work, makes it pop. The this little part of water here maybe is an inch. This little foam is maybe an inch or two thick. And so it'll have a little bit of a shadow side underneath it. Only in the spots at the very bottom of it. So it won't be all along the edge of it. It'll only be on the underside, only on the flat surfaces at the bottom, which I'll just do it and just show you. Only these flat surfaces. It won't be on the vertical surfaces, just on these horizontal surfaces. It's going to be a little bit of a shadow from the edge of that ripple. It's going to have a little, going to fade back a little bit. Let's see how that does. Like out here, just that little bit of shadow under there makes it 3D. Just under those edges. And even out here in the water, it casts a little bit of a shadow. See how that works? Just that tiny amount makes such a huge difference. Now going up, I don't want my paint to be too thick on this. And again, I don't want to just trace it all the way down. I only want the little undersides. As soon as you start tracing it, it starts looking weird. And back there, it's barely noticeable, but there's the stuff up here in the very foreground is going to be the most dominant. It just covers that bottom edge. It's just a shadow. That's all it is. And see how that did? That is the part to me that is kind of magical. So we got all our lines going. You know, you're walking down the beach. This is the draw. The composition of this painting is all these lines converging towards just the nothing, just down the beach. You're just walking down. So we're gonna get started on these houses here next, and I want to stress how not important these are. These are going to be, we're going to imply the houses. This is kind of one of the things I tell my students in my little art class we do at church, that is, these are not the subject, and I don't want them to be the subject. So if we put too much time and effort into making these pretty and detailed, they'll actually take away from the main subject, which is just the shoreline, the beach. You don't want to make them too perfect. This is one of those elements that just needs to not look wrong. If it looks wrong, it's going to draw your attention. If it's too pretty, it's going to draw your attention. We want to make it invisible. That sounds crazy, but that's what we're going to try to do. So I'm going to stick with this little liner brush, this little liner, script liner, detail brush, and we will get started on those. Let me dry this first so I don't mess it up. All right, I'm actually going to start with a little flat brush on second thought. And I've made some paint that is what I would call black. It's just 50% ultramarine blue, 50% burnt umber. That gives me the closest thing I'm going to use to black. It's pretty dark. I don't like using black out of the tube. It's too intense, so I like to make my own. And I'm going to just block this in real quick. Really what's important is the skyline of it, basically, the top edges. But some of those are lighter, some are darker. There's going to be some surfaces that are catching the sun. But a lot of this is just dark. Block in some of that dark stuff first. And doesn't have to be completely solid either. And I'm losing some of my sketch here, so I don't want to, I'm trying not to lose all of those lines. But I know that I've got some that are dark, some areas that are dark, some that are light, and this is just going to be shapes. Can't even really tell where one house starts and the next one stops. It's going to be shadows and highlights, just shapes. And I'm kind of looking at the reference photo, but I don't care if it matches it. I mean, I don't know who lives in these houses. They would probably care. I don't care. This is just the shadow side. And some of this, like right here, it's just going to be black. I mean, it's going to be just a silhouette of whatever, houses and buildings and all are back there. These beach houses. All right, and that's going to come down to a pretty solid bottom edge. It's not really flat with the sand. It's going to come below the sand a little bit in spots. That's so some areas where it kind of comes out a little. Most of this is pretty dark. Yeah. I didn't mean to have that right there. That's a good thing about acrylics. You can always wipe it off before it dries. I do want that to come down a little that way. All of that. Even just some of the brush strokes on this can give it some almost detail that you really didn't put there. And that blue is showing through. That's okay. That gives me a good shadow color. I mean, already that looks like something. Take some water and make these lines a little smaller. Yeah, that works pretty good. Smear that out a little. And you got a few, I don't know if I'll put these, there's a few little buildings, whatever, way off in the distance back here that are probably, should use a smaller brush for that. Let me do that. I don't know if you can even see that on the, with this angle or not, but a few little buildings that are back here in the, way off in the distance. Way down the beach. All right. All right, I'm going to dry that dark part and then we'll put the highlights on it. All right, I want to get zoomed in on this a little bit so you can see how pretty it's not going to be. You get close to it, you can see how ugly it is. I'm going to start with a, on my lighter colors, we'll start with a mid-tone, something in a gray. There's some of these buildings that are, you know, the left side here is going to be my shadow side. The sun is hitting the top of them. So this is going to be more like the in-between the buildings. Let's say like kind of in here. There's some areas that just have surfaces. I don't really care about too many details. I don't know what some of this is. Some of this is just shapes that I'm seeing. I think this one has some lighter area to it. Maybe some of this. Especially back here in the far off part, there's really not a whole lot to this at all. It's just in silhouette for the most part. And I got a little, let's see, and I'm just using this kind of gray and some colors that I already have on my palette. Colors don't matter too much here. This seems like a hill maybe that has a little bit of a green tint to it, so I'm gonna throw some green in there. Push it around. Looks like it might be grass on a hill. Give it a little bit of color, not too much. And then I've got some lighter colors, and this is where it's really gonna start looking like something. This is gesso with a little bit of yellow in it. This one little building here, let's see if I can find it. I think it's this one here, has a little surface to it. Just a little. All right. And then this wall, pretty light. Then we're going to go into a little different shade of white. For the surface of this building, that roof is pretty light. Just section over here. Got a couple of little spots in here. Some of this roof back here is probably catching some light. There are areas where there are rails coming down through here, which is what these kind of slanted lines are. They're stairways or something that drop down through there. Get some of those in real thin if I can. Not a whole lot to them. Let's see, let me get a different shade of color here. Just kind of making this up as I go along. These houses are different colors, different, but they're mostly in shadow. Some of these surfaces will have some different colors to them. So I think that roof was lighter. Clean that up a little. This is kind of fun, just making it up as you go along. All right, let's see here. There are a few areas down here that have some little posts, and some of those come down into the sand, but I'll put a few there. I think I want to do my back side of this house a little. That's right out on the edge of the canvas, so I don't think that matters too much. Okay. I'm gonna come back now with some of my black and clean up some of this area where I got blue showing through. These lines can be thinner, so I'm going to kind of thin that down. Yeah, that works. Now this, when we did this in class, this was kind of stressful for people because they're like, well, what am I painting? I don't even know what I'm painting. That's the point. You got to look at this from far away. And that's why I zoomed in as close as I did, because I want you to see it up close and see how ugly it is, and then we're going to zoom out and see what it did. It doesn't take much. It's mainly about the planes. You got a dark shadow side, you got some light sides coming from the top, and it just kind of creates that, illusion of surfaces catching light. Okay. All right. Let me get that little bit of building here. Couple of horizontal lines. Okay. All right. So that is not pretty. It actually got blurry on me on my camera. But let's zoom out from that now and let you see. Okay, so you see what that did? From further away, it looks a lot less crazy. It's still a little bit stark. I think I'm going to let it dry, and then I may even put some kind of dirty up some of those really bright surfaces, kind of make them a little less noticeable. But in the meantime, I'm going to do some of the stuff in the sand in the front here. We had a few, like I said, these posts. I don't know what some of this stuff is. I'm just going to put some stuff in here. Got a couple of little fence post things in areas of it. There's some stuff back here on the beach further that is just who knows what. People, maybe. Some of these areas where it's just maybe a little dirtier. Put some shadowing kind of under this, kind of tie that to the ground. There is an area through here, and this I like because it kind of helps create another one of those little lines. There's an area of what looks like maybe grasses or seaweed or something that is kind of in a row here. I'm just going to use this black paint, just kind of tap, tap, tap. Go off the edge of the canvas and kind of create some of that little edge there. And that line follows out towards the center here. That's what I like. A couple of little fence type things here. Helps hold the sand back. Okay, and not a whole lot of that. I'm going to put some water and a little brown with that. See if I can get this kind of a little bit shadowed under here. Yeah, I think that helps. There's a little more of that as you come further up here. I'll come back to my black. Right at that edge. Some of that watery brown as well. What there is there's almost an area where the sand kind of drops off a little bit. Let's see if we can create that area here that kind of pulls down. Let me get some more paint in there. And then it kind of, has a part where it kind of, a little cliff type thing, a little drop off there. Just use my fingers for that. See how that worked? Yeah. Another one of those lines, you know, those little lines that go up. Let me dry that real quick. Now that that's dry, I'm going to take a little bit of just dirty water, basically. This is just kind of water that I've got a little bit of my dark blackish brown color in. Just going to go over some of these surfaces a little bit, just to dull them down a little bit. They're a little too stark, drawing a little too much attention. Just some of the brightest ones. Okay. It may take a couple of layers of that. I think while I'm in this, I will go ahead and put me some more green. Looking at the picture, there is some green. If I can get some that's not too pretty. Give me 1 second here. This is pretty green right here. It's got some grass on this side here. I'll put some along there as well. Yeah, not a whole lot. And let's continue with that dirtying. That's still a little bit stark. Just going to kind of put this on, let it sit for a minute, kind of soak in, kind of dry a little bit, and then I'll tap it with a paper towel. Usually. Yeah, so that does. It kind of toned it down a little. Not super important. Like I said, I didn't want those buildings to be an attention getter. They're going to pull away more than they're going to help. All right, is there anything else I'm missing? We got water, got sand, got some houses. That's about it. I hope you try this painting. This is an easy one. It really is. If you get your paint thin enough and you have patience and do those layers, layer after layer, have your blow dryer handy, do a layer, dry a little bit, another layer, dry a little more. It's really one of those that's easy and rewarding, especially when you get to the magic part at the bottom with the shadows. It's kind of my favorite thing. The wet sand and the shadows really is what makes this work. But super easy. I hope you try it. I appreciate you watching this. Please like and subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think. I will have these sketch and the reference photo available in the links in the description. So good luck with it, and I'd love for you to send me a message with your picture on there. Show me if you painted it. Show it to me. I'd love to see it. All right, thanks for watching.